So I've always loved to cover Lifetime movies on my channel, and for a while now I've occasionally made videos where I select a list of Lifetime movies that fall into a certain category of subject matter, whether it's cheerleaders, mommies, daddies, or Vivica A. Fox, and I review all of them. And especially since making the mommy and daddy videos, I've wanted to do more videos like that focus on these recurring Lifetime archetypes, but in the last year or so I kept getting caught up in other projects. So now that it's a new year and I've completed some big videos I had been planning to make for a while, what I've really been itching to do is go back to the basics and make some good old-fashioned, not 4-hour-long videos about silly Lifetime movies. I've gotten several suggestions from the audience over the years on what archetypes to cover next: Lifetime nannies, teachers, neighbors, etc. And ultimately, the one I was most excited to explore next was Lifetime husbands. Today's video is all about Lifetime husband movies. I decided to use the same strategy I employed for my Lifetime mommy and daddy videos, which is just searching for our keyword on the Lifetime Movie Club, a streaming service that I do pay for, and watching all the titles that come up. I have omitted a couple that I found too boring to be worth covering. I also generally omit any titles that are based directly on real life, because as much as I am intrigued by Gaslit by My Husband, the Morgan Metzer story, I don't really feel like touching real people's lives in these silly videos. But that left me with 7 titles: Another Woman's Husband, Betrayed by My Husband, Framed by My Husband, Husband, Wife, and Their Lover, She's Obsessed with My Husband, My Husband's Killer Girlfriend, and My Husband's Secret Life. A good template for generating your own Lifetime movie title is just using my loved one or acquaintance's adjective noun, my husband's secret life, my daughter's psycho friend, my yoga instructor's evil dog. So let's do this. I'm not reviewing these in any particular order. Another Woman's Husband is a bit of a vintage Lifetime movie. It's from 2000. This one follows Susan, an insecure housewife who befriends Laurel, a psychologist who is unknowingly having an affair with Susan's husband. A weird thing about Another Woman's Husband is that it seems to have branded itself as a thriller. The poster looks like it's ripping off Wild Things, and IMDb even calls it a psychological thriller, but it really isn't. It just isn't. This is a drama at best. Really, I'd call it a melodrama. It's just a story about 2 women in an unfortunate interpersonal situation working through their trauma and whatnot. There is some suspense in the fact that neither woman knows that Susan's husband is Laurel's new boyfriend, but it's not like thriller or horror suspense, it's just dramatic tension, so that did puzzle me a little. I kept waiting for some Lifetime thriller turn of events, like a murder or stalking or something, but it never came. One thing I always have to give older Lifetime movies is that they always feel a little higher effort. The production value is a little better. I imagine they didn't used to make quite as many of these per year as they do now. Of course, most movies from before a certain year are going to be shot on film, so that gives older Lifetime movies a more cinematic quality. And they often feature bigger name actors than the average modern Lifetime movie. This one has Lisa Rinna, who now is probably better known as a Real Housewife than an actor, but does fine in this movie, I think. I did make a note at one point saying, "Is it misogynistic that I don't buy Lisa Rinna as a psychologist?" And I don't feel like expanding on that, so I won't. I like how comically evil Susan's mom is in this movie.
I thought we had plans.
Well, we did, Susan. But things changed suddenly. Now I have company.
I like this ridiculous moment where Susan's husband implies that her apparent infertility is a result of her swimming too much.
Maybe it's the swimming that's messed up your cycles.
And I like this scene where Laurel and Susan basically have a Glinda Elphaba popular moment.
Wow, Susan, you're beautiful. Come on, look for yourself.
This is kind of one of those movies where all the problems could have been solved by the women getting together, in my opinion. But overall, it was fine. Not terribly noteworthy, but entertaining enough in its early Lifetime melodrama. Betrayed by My Husband. God, I hate AI overviews. Betrayed by My Husband, apparently also known as Washed Away, according to IMDb, is about a woman named Gabrielle whose husband Parker goes missing on a kayaking trip and is presumed dead, but when Gabrielle sees Parker in public one day, she becomes convinced that he's actually faked his death. I can't say this is a terribly entertaining Lifetime movie. To be honest, the main reason I kept it on the list is that I was incredibly confused when I started watching it, because it is almost identical in plot to a different Lifetime movie I watched one time called The Man with My Husband's Face. I haven't seen this one in a while. I didn't have it in me to rewatch it for this video, but that one also follows a woman whose husband apparently dies in a kayaking accident, only for the wife to see him later on in a public place. And because of that, I spent like the first third of the movie trying to figure out if it was The Man with My Husband's Face, and it had been retitled for the Lifetime Movie Club, and I had just forgotten what the actors looked like. But in fact, they do appear to be two distinct movies, so I couldn't help but wonder, was the crew of The Man with My Husband's Face aware of Betrayed by My Husband? Was this an intentional remake, or was it purely coincidental? And if so, is this the inevitable result of Lifetime having such a prolific output of formulaic thrillers that they're essentially recreating the infinite monkey theorem with their own oeuvre? Much to contemplate. Anyway, I like the protagonist of this movie. I found her relatable in some ways. I love this part where she accidentally makes a really dark joke in front of her teen daughter who's just lost her father.
It's been 2 months since the funeral. If I spend one more day in my pajamas, I'm gonna kill myself. I'm sorry.
I like how the protagonist's friend character clearly only exists so that the protagonist has someone to think aloud to for the benefit of the audience.
They never found his body. So you're saying that he staged his death and then took your insurance money?
I like this campy, evil woman character. She's so evil. What an evil woman.
We'll start over. Get new jobs.
A job? No.
Though I do feel like she should have been played by Liz Gillies. We know she's done Lifetime before, and she would have killed this. Framed by My Husband, not to be confused with Betrayed by My Husband, follows June, the wife of a famous and charismatic novelist who tries to help her husband pay off some people extorting him, only to find them murdered and herself framed for the crime. By her husband, believe it or not. I've talked before about the annoying Lifetime convention of revealing who the villain is early in the movie without any intrigue, but there's something extra funny about Lifetime movies that spoil the villain in the title. A big element of this movie is the titular husband being a sexual predator. The actual extortion is someone threatening to expose him for committing a sexual assault, which June initially doesn't believe, but it eventually becomes clear that it's very much true and that he's done it many times. At first, I was kind of intrigued by this. I think a woman's famous husband being accused of sexual violence is very topical, and I think there's a lot of drama you can get out of that scenario in a story. There are some examples of that in movies already, but I don't think this movie really does anything interesting with it. It becomes a very literal, unambiguous cat and mouse game. There's not much focus on the psychological element of the situation or what implications it has for their relationship or anything. I did think it was kind of cool how immediately competent and badass June becomes after being arrested for murder. Early on, we hear that she's a medical transcriptionist. She leads this pretty mundane life, but then once she's in trouble, she's easily escaping custody. She's knocking people out, putting on disguises, breaking into people's houses. I liked this extremely ugly wig the husband puts on to go cheat on his wife. I love any Lifetime movie where a character wastes time getting out their badass one-liner before delivering the final blow to the villain.
How is this for paranoid, you son of a bitch?
And I also like how in the final scene, the sisters say, "I'll cheers to that."
I will cheers to that.
I love when you're watching The Bachelor or something and people say, "I'll cheers to that," as if cheers is a verb. I could understand people making that mistake in the moment, but it's much more embarrassing in a scripted movie written by a writer. Husband, Wife, and Their Lover has quite the sensational title, and it's quite the sensational movie. This one, as you can imagine, is about a married couple who decide to spice things up by introducing a third for one night. But in classic Lifetime fashion, said third turns out out to be a deranged evil woman who will stop at nothing to destroy our protagonist's life. This one had an entertaining premise, but I really think the funny stuff comes out in the details. The protagonist, Veronica, is the heir to like a cereal dynasty, the heir to a large breakfast cereal corporation, which is already a funny thing for a character to be, but is made funnier by everything else about it. Apparently, their flagship cereal is called Crunchers with a Z, and the company headquarters look extremely weird. The interiors in this building almost make it look like they're in a church or a medieval-style home of some sort. And basically, the defining characteristic of this company and its CEO, Veronica's dad, is that they're conservative.
Well, good old-fashioned family values
are the backbone of Ballard.
Not in like a hardcore right-wing way necessarily, at least not explicitly, but we're told that they're very traditional and all about old-fashioned family values. Now, the only reason for this element of the story is to raise the stakes and build suspense for the protagonist's scandalous secret, her and her husband having had a threesome, coming to light and destroying her career. And the movie hammered this home so much, so hard, that it began to feel almost like a comedy to me. Like, remember, audience, this woman has the most traditional, conservative dad in the world, and she has done the most scandalous thing she could have done by Lifetime movie standards. So you'd better hope her secret doesn't get out.
Yes, he is set in his ways.
He is a petrified forest. He will not sway. So we just keep it all traditional.
Understood.
You're smart, young, modern, still family-friendly.
And weirdly enough, it never does. This is the big threat that looms over the whole movie, and the evil woman even kidnaps her dad at one point, but as far as we know, the threesome thing never does get out to her dad or the public or whatever. It never goes beyond a threat. And that just seems a little odd that they wouldn't use that to have a big disaster low point in the story. We've seen Lifetime movies before where someone's nudes get leaked or something. That might have yielded some good drama here. But whatever. I liked the protagonist's very muscular arms. I found them a little distracting, to be honest with you, but not in a bad way. I thought the husband was good looking too. He was kind of giving me discount Jonathan Bailey. And I also liked the villain's extremely convoluted plan. She's had it out for these two since high school, and she became Veronica's personal trainer at one point, which is where we start the movie, but Veronica asked her to have this threesome with her organically. The villain didn't really manipulate her to do that.
What about you?
What about me?
So presumably, she somehow managed to become Veronica's personal trainer and then just waited around for like 3 years for the perfect opportunity to leverage something against her to just happen to fall into her lap. And then when she does start acting evil, she doesn't even try to ease into it or manipulate at all. She just starts acting extremely weird and off-putting and asking the couple point blank to give her large sums of money.
I just wanted to come by and talk to you about maybe you lending me $5,000?
I love her. No initiative, no plan, no tact, just vibes. She's obsessed with my husband, follows evil deranged woman Violet, who becomes intent on destroying the marriage of her neighbors Garrett and Daisy, since Violet briefly dated Garrett in high school and has been obsessed with him ever since. No, I don't know if both women having flower names is supposed to be meaningful in some way. I love a Lifetime movie with this specific and descriptive of a title. It's just so funny to me. But I think I've been kind of spoiled by the wrong movies, because now I'm disappointed whenever a Lifetime movie doesn't feature a big dumb title drop.
Looks like you hired the wrong wedding planner.
I could tell right off the bat that this would be a fun one.
Come on, honey, I'll help you.
Would you ever touch his photo?
I have to admit, I actually had some major writer's block while working on this video. I had watched 6 or 7 of these movies, and I was feeling like none of them stood out to me as that funny. I was worried I wouldn't have enough to make this an entertaining video, or even to motivate myself to write about them. But then I decided to try one more movie, She's Obsessed with My Husband, and it honestly reignited my entire creative drive. That might be overselling how entertaining this movie actually ultimately is. It's not anything too crazy, but I guess stylistically it caught my attention more than the others. I don't often say this about Lifetime movies, but I think much of the entertainment factor in this one comes from the editing.
Why did you and Garrett break up?
I never broke up with him. You showed up and ruined everything.
It was so long ago, who can remember?
It has all this wild editing to emphasize how crazed the protagonist is and how hot she finds the husband, and I was really enjoying it. Like I said, the very first scene sets the movie up for success. After that, we see this little montage of some kind of fashion design studio, and then this young woman working, and I assumed that this was our protagonist. But we cut to another woman and her husband, and I was like, oh, I guess this is our protagonist. So who was that girl in the last scene? Then said girl enters the scene and reveals that she's the couple's teenage daughter. I don't know why, but I was very taken aback by this character being a teen. I think it's the way they introduced her. It seemed like they were just showing an adult woman at work. I don't know, it caught me off guard. The villain character, Violet, is so entertaining. She's a classic Lifetime villain in the sense that she has a creepy picture board of the person she's fixated on, she spies on him through the window, etc. I guess you could say she's obsessed with my husband. I love a good Lifetime villain freakout, and this movie has a great one.
18 years ago.
There's this sequence where the married couple are having sex, and Violet knows and is angry about it. So the film intercuts this with Violet angrily preparing poison that she's going to bake into a pie for the family. I just thought that was an inspired subject for a montage. I love the part where the protagonist's boss starts violently throwing up in a public cafe because she's eaten the poisoned pie, and the boss acts way too chill about it.
I'm okay. I just had yogurt and melon for breakfast. Shouldn't be right.
Okay, I'm calling 911.
Honestly, I just need to go home.
One of the ways Violet wrongs the protagonist is by hacking her bank account and transferring the couple's entire $75,000 life savings to a con man posing as a financial planning company. And I just feel like in the real world, any bank would flag a transaction like that. I don't buy that you could just make that transfer online, no questions asked.
Done.
There's this thread throughout the movie where the couple's daughter wants to go to this prestigious fashion school in Paris, and the parents are stressed because they can't afford this. This is a very realistic concern, but at the same time, the family never discusses the possibility of financial aid of any kind. Anyway, at the end of the movie, it's revealed that after the daughter wrote to the school explaining the harrowing ordeal her family recently endured, the school decided to give her a full scholarship, and I just love the implications of that. I'm picturing some Parisian admissions person reading this letter about the evil murderer who moved in next door and had the girl's mom sent to prison for a crime she didn't commit and strangled and almost stabbed the girl, all because she has a high school obsession with the girl's dad, and being like, sacre bleu! I guess you would have no choice but to give that girl a full ride. Like, it's the least you can do. My husband's killer girlfriend follows Leah, a divorced woman who leaves her young daughter in the care of a seemingly perfect nanny, only to return to find her child abandoned with no trace of the nanny, making it look like Leah is guilty of neglect. Worse yet, the nanny does show up again under a new name, dating Leah's ex-husband, but of course no one believes her when she tries to tell them this. I think this one has a lot of things going for it. It stars Cindy Busby, who I've seen in a few Lifetime movies at this point. She plays the wrong stepmother, and she also stars in one of the worst Christmas movies I've I've ever seen, Runaway Christmas Bride, which I covered in a video for my Patreon about David Dakota movies. This is your reminder to subscribe to my Patreon. It has the David Dakota bonus video, some other bonus videos. I'm now almost done with my 3-part Patreon review of the show Dante's Cove, and I'm currently working on a Patreon video in which I try to write a Lifetime movie screenplay on camera, so it's a fun time over there. I feel like Barton fucking Fink. But I think Cindy Busby is always a fun presence in these movies. She's always very committed. And speaking of which, maybe the best part of this entire movie is this scene where Leah realizes her husband's new girlfriend is the nanny and just slaps the shit out of her.
And you don't deserve anyone as good as Adam.
And then when she's done, she does it again.
I hope you throw the book at her for what she did to that girl.
Then she assaults a cop.
Put your hands behind you.
It's just so amazing because normally the protagonists of these movies seem bound by a sort of lifetime female docility where they have to take the high road all the time and remain passive victims for much of the movie, but not this lady. It's very satisfying to watch. And then similarly to Framed by My Husband, Leah also becomes a weirdly bold and competent fugitive once she's on the run, evading the police, tracking down a hacker to investigate for her, wrestling a cop's gun away.
You know how to use one of those?
How hard can it be?
It's like the ultimate fantasy wish fulfillment of having someone wrong you and then setting out on this surgically precise revenge rampage. It's truly like Lifetime's suburban mom John Wick, and I appreciate that about My Husband's Killer Girlfriend. My Husband's Secret Life is so weird. I had to include it in this video mostly because it involves subject matter that I have never seen covered in a Lifetime movie before. Like, if you hear the title, My Husband's Secret Life, what would you guess the secret life in question would be? Probably him cheating on the wife, right? Maybe he has a secret second family. I'm sure there are lots of Lifetime movies about that. Maybe it's a little scarier and he's secretly a serial killer. Or, like in Framed by My Husband, secretly a predator or abuser. But what if I told you that instead of any of those, the secret life in My Husband's Secret Life is being a Soviet spy in the KGB?
Eileen Lark, Massachusetts. Brian Tippett, Pennsylvania.
The wife in this movie notices her husband reciting a list of names in a Russian accent in his sleep at night, and she's like, that's odd. He's arguing with this mysterious woman. He has this little KGB branded lighter. This movie is crazy. The husband actually gets hit by a car by one of his shady spy contacts and spends most of the movie in a coma. At one point, the protagonist discovers that her best friend is actually an FBI agent who only befriended her to keep an eye on the husband, who I guess the FBI knew might be a spy.
I'm an FBI agent, JJ. We've had Freddie under investigation.
What are you talking about?
And bizarrely, this is the first Lifetime movie on this list in which the wife and husband end up together. After faking the husband's death to get the KGB off his back, the wife sets out to start a new life, and the husband just sort of tags along. After all that they went through, they end the movie just flirting with each other again. I think it's so funny.
Traitor.
That sounds good to me. Hate to be the one to tell you.
The only explanation I can think of for any of this is that this must have been one of those movies produced by a third-party production company and eventually acquired by Lifetime. Many Lifetime movies are made by like Mar Vista, Reel One, Hybrid, but occasionally you get one that feels a little off base from what Lifetime usually does, which I always assume means that the movie was not intended to be a TV thriller, but was more like someone's independent passion project that happened to be Lifetime Lifetime adjacent enough for them to option it at some point. That's what I suspect happened here. Apparently the movie's original title was Sleeper, which does make much more sense as a title. But yeah, this one was carried for me entirely by its premise, which I never would have expected from a Lifetime movie. It was quite a ride. Thanks for joining me on another tour of some of Lifetime's offerings. If there's one message to take away from this set of movies, it's that husbands are bad and you shouldn't trust them unless they're in the KGB. Feel free to suggest even more ideas for recurring Lifetime subject matter to cover in the future. I'm not sure what's next for this year in terms of videos. I'm kind of leaving my options open for random subjects to fall into my lap because those often end up being my favorite video topics. I got a real job recently, and it's only part-time, but I'm feeling a little busier than usual, so I'd love to do more reasonably lengthed videos like this one this year. I know everybody loves watching 4-hour-long videos, but I don't like editing them, frankly. I've also got my podcast now. Check out the First Respodcast if you want to hear more stuff from me more frequently, but if you'll excuse me, I have to go trap an unsuspecting woman in a doomed marriage and then frame her for murder.
You've heard a lot about me, but it's only true when it comes from my lips. My lips were made for talking, and that's just what they'll do. My advice to you, don't hustle the hustler. I don't have to buy it, because I already own it. In the game of life, it's winner take all. The secret to life? Dance like everyone is watching. My lips are legendary, and they will never gloss over the truth.